Okay, so I got this reference footage of fish bubbles in my fish tank. If you watch, they're kind of all flat shaped, at least ovular or disc shaped, and then they kind of just are turbulent and move left and right while moving in a continuous pace up. So we're going to recreate that in our geometry and then instance that onto particles. The benefit of doing that is going to be that whichever way the bubble moves, no matter what rotation we put on it, it's going to behave like you would expect in real life. The mass is going to follow its momentum. If we were to put all that left and right motion into the particle expression and have the particle itself move, that might not happen. Alright, so I'm just going to deform this a little bit, get a base shape, and give it a little concave. Go into my selection here, our move tool, and turn on soft selection. Just right there. And I'll just give it a little bit of a dent in there. Maybe move this out a little bit. And that'll be good. Turn that back off. So with it selected, you can go soft and rigid bodies under your dynamics module. And go create soft body, and in the option box we're going to duplicate and make the copy or the new one soft. And we're going to make the non-soft or the original a goal at a weight of 0.5 and create. So if we hit play, nothing. So if we go into our outliner and under our new geometry here, there's a particle shape. And if we add fields to it, it'll start moving. Let's just add a turbulence. So I'm going to select my original geometry quick and hide it so you can see what's going on here. And my turbulence field, and turn it up really high and turn its frequency up. There we go. That should help. So there you can see we're getting some movement on our bubble. It's a little too gross. So what we can do is let's get our bubbles to get that left and right movement. So in our original, I'm going to animate that, which our new guy will follow since we turned on the set as goal option. And I'm going to write some expressions on its X and Z translates. First, let me turn it on. Okay. So, let's go to Window, Animation Editors, Expression Editor. And it popped up over here on my other screen. And it's Translate X. Let's have it move in a noise pattern. There's a sine, cosine noise, and some other stuff. But noise, cosine, and sine are the most common I use. And we'll do it over time. And we'll do the same on the Z. Just change this to Z and create. So now that's going to move in our, I'll turn this off so we can see it moving. Now we can offset our expression a little bit to give the movement a little more randomization. So it'll go faster in X, and its movement in Z will be 2 times bigger. Oops. Alright, so that's pretty good. Now, like I talked before, where its movement, it's not really following its mass very much. I mean, it is a little bit, but there's no like overlapping action. So in order to do that, if we select this, go to our soft and rigid bodies menu, we can paint the soft body weights tool. What that's going to do is right now each particle by default is set to a weight of 1, which means that its corresponding vertex follows that particle at a weight of 1. So what we can do is paint different values so it's not locked on there. The movement is overlapped a little bit. So I'm going to replace with a value of 0.8. We don't want to get too crazy. And I'll paint this middle section, replacing those values. And I'm going to make sure my opacity on my brush is at 1 so I get to actually get 0.8 and not something less. Go all the way around, make sure, and then I'm going to hit smooth, scroll down here and hit flood, and see what that looks like. See, now you can see our center. It's moving around a little bit. Still not great. So what we can do is select our object, and hitting Y will bring up our last tool, which that was. And I'm going to flood this a few more times. And I'm going to add to the whole thing 0.1. And we'll see what that does. And you can play with this for the rest of your life until you're happy. But I'm just going to move on for now. Alright, so in order to be able to instance this onto our particles, we can't just grab, well, we could just grab this and instance it, but each instance of it would be doing the exact same thing no matter what expressions we wrote on it. What we're going to have to do is make a cycle of objects, and then based on the expressions we write, we can have our particle cycle through those instances of geometry, and it'll look like they're animated. So what we can do is duplicate it now at this frame, go to this frame, duplicate it, go to this frame, duplicate it, duplicate it, duplicate it, duplicate it. And that's going to take you a long time. So luckily I have this code here. What this is going to do is basically run through our timeline and duplicate our bubble at each frame for us, so we don't have to spend our entire day duplicating geometry. Okay, what it's going to do, it's going to get our start time down here, and it puts it into a float, and it uses this command, get playback, the return value, which these backticks are, of playback options, query the minimum, and we're going to do the same for the end, which is 100. And then we're going to do a for loop. So we set our integer t, and our string is what we have selected, so I have that selected. And then for integer t, it equals start time, and then while start time is less than or equal to end time, add 1 to it. So once it reaches end time, it's not going to add 1 to this, and it will stop doing the following commands. So it's going to first set current time to t, which will be, whatever frame it's on. Duplicate what we have selected, and then return our selection to what we selected from, not the new thing that we selected. So with this all highlighted, just move it off screen, and I'm going to hit the enter on my number pad, and it's going to run through, and it's going to duplicate that geometry. And then once it gets to the end, it stops. Now in our outliner we have all of these copies. There's 100 of them, starting at 2 and going to 101. But you'll notice under each of them is that particle from our softbodies, which we don't need. So you can go in and select all of them and delete them all by hand, or down here in the mill you can select by name using this command. Select, and then the asterisk is anything before this plus particle. And there's no numbers after it in any instance, so we don't need to add another asterisk. If there was, particle 2, then you'd want to add another one, but we don't need to. And hit enter on my number pad, and now it's selected all of those, and we can delete them. Now we have no particles. Keep in mind that'll get rid of the one on your original softbody, so if you weren't happy with it, unselect that before you delete it. Alright, so now we have 100 instances of bubbles. What are we going to do with that? First I'm going to show you how to cycle through something animated like this. It could be a bubble, or if you had an animated character you could do the same thing, but in this case we're doing bubbles. So I'm going to create an emitter and scale it up a little bit. And I'm just going to put all these in a group so I can navigate in my outliner more quickly. Alright, so my particle selected, I'm going to add a uniform field. Make sure it goes in the up direction, and we'll turn it up to 10. Create. And make sure that's working like I want it to. I actually need to make it bigger since it's a volume shape. And yeah, you can see they're going up. They're a little hard to see, so I'll turn them to spheres. There. And you can see they're going up. Alright. So, let's see what cycling looks like before we get into using several different types of bubbles. So I will select all of my instance geometry, and then my particles instance or replacement. And I'm going to turn this down, the emission rate on my emitter down to 5, just to keep the confusion less. And those spheres are where the particle is, and you notice our first instance is not at 0, which is going to work to our benefit later on. So I'm going to turn my particle shape back down to points so we're not confused as to what we're looking at. Alright, and if we get our outliner back out and go to my instancer, and in its attributes we can change its cycle to sequential. And now when it's born, it's going to play it through those. You see our particle's not moving left or right, it's moving up, but our left and right movement is coming from the instance geometry.